Hello, thank you for clicking on this video. Today I'm going to be reviewing the fifth studio album by Icelandic singer Björk. The album is called Medúlla, and it was released on August 30th, 2004. This is probably her least accessible album that she's ever made. It's definitely her most avant-garde, her most intriguing, but weird. This is when you say, oh, Björk Björked again. This album is that. It's a very inaccessible record, and I have to be honest, it took me a little bit to realize the true gem-like quality of this record. I actually now count this record as one of my favorites of hers. It's actually not as far down the list as I once thought it was in terms of ranking my favorite Björk albums. And so that's why I'm reviewing this album now. This album is very cohesive. I think all of Björk's albums are. She's very good at crafting a unique character and sound and visual for each record. So for this one, she wanted to go for something that was very primal, that felt very visceral and also like something that connected all of humans throughout history and time. She was originally going to call this album Ink, like to reference the blood that runs through us. But she decided to use the Latin term for bone marrow, which is medulla. She decided to call the album that. Again, we all have bone marrow, and it's a medical term, so it's this anthropological kind of connection that kind of grounds the album in that space, because it is very trippy and psychedelic. But there is also a through line of history and of humanity. And so there's a human nature to this album that makes it kind of unique for the fact that it is about like kind of this emotional struggle portrayed through the voice. The voice is the vessel, obviously, that carries all of her albums, but this one in particular is all about it. It's almost a cappella. There are a few instrumentals incorporated, there's some piano work done, and there are some bassline synthesizers used with a little bit of sampling in certain tracks. But a lot of this album is very sparse in production, and it's just her voice or other people included into the sound. She creates a choir with her voice and others that she introduces. She has all these different beatboxers and throat singers featured on the album, and it really creates this aboriginal kind of tribal feel in a sense, because there is a cultural heritage that, you know, the voice is the one instrument that has always been with us, that we always use as like the primal kind of primeval tool to communicate and to sing. And so to honor the voice with a full album, and Björk has a very unique voice, so it suits her well. And I think that the concept carries through this album beautifully. All the songs feel like they belong on this record. Although there are some songs that will leave you scratching your head, there are some songs that are real standouts for me as well. All of the songs kind of blend together into this one beautiful, long, kind of abstract piece. And it is a longer album for her. She usually doesn't make albums that are 15 songs long. This is the longest album she's ever made, although some of those songs are more like interludes and they're a lot shorter. This album also is unique because it's the one album where she actually sings in Icelandic openly, and she has Icelandic song titles. So this album also has a lot of inspiration from different poets, from Iceland and from abroad. There's an E.E. Cummings poem that she recites. There's a lot of different things thrown into the mix. It's not just her own songwriting, although she does write almost everything on this album. Let's get right into it. Say The Pleasure Is All Mine is the most beautiful intro to any of Björk's albums I think she's ever done. You know, the first time I listened to it, I was like, well, okay, I'm not quite sure. The throat singing in the background is very abrasive and intense. On first listen, it will kind of throw you for a loop. You need to kind of get used to it and readjust it. And I actually hadn't listened to this album in full in many years. And when I listened to it again, prepping for this review, I kind of did have to, like, for a moment, just readjust myself to remember, oh yeah, this album's a lot weirder than I kind of vaguely remembered it was. But it's not, you know, weird in a funny way. I don't find it that comical. I mean, some people might, and look, if they do, they're probably not that much of a Björk fan. They probably don't appreciate music that is a little bit puzzling or not quite so accessible on first listen. I mean, this is definitely not accessible on first listen. This is the definition of an album that you need to let grow and ripen over time, because the first time you listen to it, you might feel a little traumatized. You might feel like, what? WTF, what just happened? Like, Björk has ravaged me. Like, I do remember the first time I was left with all these emotions. There were songs I loved, but I was also like, "What just happened? Help me. Help." It has that effect on you. Bear with it because on repeated listens, you'll start to appreciate it more for its obscurity and for its uncomfortableness, because the uncomfortableness and sort of aura of mystery that shrouds this album, I think, is what is meant the album's meant to do. It's meant to question and it's meant to ponder things that don't make any sense. And instead of the lyrics in this case carrying that meaning, which usually they do, and don't get me wrong, the songwriting is beautiful. The songwriting does kind of get lost in the mix of all the weird sort of sounds that come through. And I think that uncomfortableness is better portrayed by the melodies that are a little bit off sometimes. Melodies that almost go there but don't, but actually I think beautifully feel orchestrated to be like that. Everything feels purposeful, even though it may seem chaotic. It's a really well crafted album, and I give a lot of props to Björk because it shows really powerful musicianship. And not many artists would be comfortable or able to create an album like this, but Björk can. And I'm so glad she did because this does show her kind of more going into her more experimental side of things after coming off of Vespertine and Homogenic. Wouldn't necessarily say those albums are that accessible. Post and Debut would be the accessible albums, but even then. So Pleasure Is All Mine is one of my favorite songs on this album. It just smoothly introduces us to the sound. She builds up all the different voices and sounds that you're going to hear later on in the album. You've got a little bit of that guttural kind of panicky throat sound, which is really hard to describe other than that because you really just have to listen to it to kind of know what I'm talking about. And then this swooping sort of humming sound that she will do with her voice that's actually very soothing. Her voice goes in all those kind of directions. It's abrasive and it's soothing, it's calming, it's mysterious, it's loud, it's soft. It has all of the flavors that you could want, mixed with a beautiful sort of opening lyric that's basically saying, let me introduce you to this mystery and deepen the flow. I find that lyric really interesting. The next song, Show Me Forgiveness, is this really small interlude song. It's the shortest song on the album, where I kind of just take it as Björk shouting to the universe or to herself, both being maybe the same thing, asking herself to forgive herself and love herself fully so that she can live. She says, so that the girl may live. Show me forgiveness for having lost sight of myself. It's a really powerful lyric that when I first heard the album, it struck home really hard with me because I kind of was just like, yeah, I need to learn to forgive myself too. And there's this raw, unabashed, very personal approach that she uses by having no sounds in the background, just her voice kind of half singing, but also kind of just half shouting because the melody isn't really there. But it doesn't need to be. It's meant to just sort of be an expression of an idea or of pain or of something that just needed to be said, something that Björk needed to get off of her chest. And that also kind of serves as the second part, I think, of the two songs that really intro this album. The third song, Where is the Line? Okay, so this is where the album shows you its underbelly. I would say this is definitely not a favorite song of mine by any means, but it was one that on repeated listens, I finally started to realize its strengths instead of looking to it as, I don't want to necessarily say downfalls because it's hard to just say a song sounds bad. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? The song, it's meant to sound bad. It's not like she was trying to make a song that sounds pleasurable and it came out like this and you're like, Björk, what are you doing? You're like, no, Björk's not making a song. This is ingenious, you know? She made a song that actually sounds bad, but it's so bad that it's good. You know what I'm saying? Now, it's not my favorite by any means. It has the weirdest music video of all the music videos that Björk has made, and she's made some very interesting ones, I'll say that. The music video is a little bit much for me. It's a little bit on the gross side. It's actually one of the first music videos I actually saw of Björk, and it was a big mistake because if you want to introduce someone to Björk, do not show them this video. This is kind of like one of the last ones you'd probably want to see because by then you'll be like, okay, well, Björk's done all this other stuff. It's redeemable. I'm not saying that she shouldn't have made this video, though. I think that the fact that this song and the video in particular is so strange and hard to describe is important because Björk is hard to describe and hard to pin down, and life is hard to describe and hard to pin down. And the aesthetic that she's going for is strange and avant-garde. So it fits perfectly into the narrative of her music. And so I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, this song is meant to be hard to listen to and it's also, more importantly, the visual meant to be shocking and a little bit gross, but powerful. But the pop sensibilities that are on this song and a few others later on the album, there are the few songs that, well, they are singles, so they have a little bit more of a chorus. They have a little bit more of a verse chorus structure. They're a little bit more of like what you could consider a Björk pop song, even though that's a real stretch at this point. Lyrically, I take this song to be about a bunch of different things. You know, "Where is the line with you" automatically speaks of a relationship, you know, someone trying to understand another person's, you know, habits or their relationship, you know, where is the line here? Like how do I get through to you? Like what is the bridge that we can build to understand each other better? Or, you know, when is enough for you with this sort of thing? Like, is you keep doing this to me, where does this end? I'm trying to understand you. But on the other end, I also kind of see this song being about herself and her asking herself, you know, she sings, "I want to be flexible. I want to be elastic. I want to understand you or the world or myself better." She's admitting that she has her own faults as well. And even though she sounds frustrated when she's saying, "Where is the line with you?" about someone else, she could also be mad at herself by saying, "I want to go out of my way for you, but I can't do that because I'm trying to understand what your problem is." And ultimately, I do think the former idea of this being about a lover who's being unreceptive or being difficult to deal with, I do think that the song is predominantly more about that because it is her kind of expressing that, like, what can I do? I've tried everything, you know? The next song is a very hymn-like song. It feels like it's something that's sung in a church because it has a nice backing choir vocal in the background. And it's the first song on this album that is sung in Icelandic. I will pronounce them terribly, so I apologize to any Icelandic people who are watching. Icelandic is a very difficult language to pronounce. Um, Vokuro? I don't think that's how it's said at all. I don't know. It means vigil, and it's in Icelandic. And the song is a poem which was written by this Icelandic guy. Again, I cannot pronounce his name. I'll write it down in the description or in the bottom there. And the song was composed by another Icelandic guy. So she got permission to use this song in her album and sing it, and it was actually a song that she had originally planned to include on Vespertine, and I think that does make sense because this song is kind of the one outlier on the album because it actually is very, I don't want to say simple, but it is a little bit, well, it's composed by someone else. It's not a Björk composition. Even though she adds her own Björkness to the way she pronounces those words and that beautiful Icelandic accent, it doesn't fit the rest of the album's vibe very much. I mean, it feels like something sung in a cathedral. It feels like the aura of it is completely different to everything else on this album. Though it's not as far out there as you could think. But I do think it belongs a little bit better on Vespertine, so I can see why the song was originally meant for that album, but had to be ended up putting on this record because it didn't make the cut. Some of the lyrics translated into English: "Nestling spring, hid at the hill's root, awake as are we, faith and life, quiet cold spring, eye of the depths, into the firmament, staring still in the night. Far away wakes the great world, mad with grim enchantment." I mean, these lyrics are extremely poetic and extremely beautiful and descriptive. And I think that that's sort of a unique sort of style for Björk to sort of embody because Björk doesn't write like that in that kind of poetic prose. She has a little bit more of a avant-garde approach to songwriting, which is sometimes just very upfront and honest. And this is like, you know, this is meant to be like wordplay and beautiful and soft. And I think that it works pretty well. I'm glad that she included it because it does show a bit more of her Icelandic heritage and roots and pays homage to an Icelandic poet. So you know, it's a little bit more like a tribute song in that regard. All right, so the next song, this is another Icelandic song, and it's a lot shorter this time. This song is pronounced Olbertan. I don't know how you'd say that again. I'm just gonna annotate it. But this song, I seem to remember reading, is actually kind of inspired by Björk as a child when she would go into the mountains in her native country and she would just vocalize, you know, as a kid. And this song has a childlike approach to it where it's just like her mimicking bird songs and there's a little bit of a playful innocence to it where it's not you know, it's not dark and moody. It's just her experimenting with her voice and all the different sounds that it can make. And I really appreciate it that's on there because, again, it's Björk connecting to her roots through her voice and tracking its progression and her history with it. In English, the song title translates to all published. All right, so then we come to the next song on this record. Who is it? Carry My Joy on the left, Carry My Joy on the right. That's a long title. It's shortened to just being really Who Is It? There are actually two productions of this song. The one that is included on the album, which has a small little intro, and then the one that she filmed this gorgeous music video in Iceland for, where she's wearing this iconic bell-like dress, which was designed by Alexander McQueen. I've seen this dress in person when I went to her MoMA show in 2015, and it's one of my favorite things she's worn in a music video, because it's just this beautifully jeweled bell dress that she sort of sways back and forth as if she's ringing herself as a bell. And it's just a beautiful thing. It kind of is more memorable to me than the song itself. The song is a nice song. It's a little bit playful, and it's a little bit more innocent in its sound. This isn't like Where Is the Line, where it's trying to be dark and abrasive. This song is more lighter. It features the throat singing by this woman, Tanya Tagaq, and also the beatboxer Razel. And they all come together and form this really beautiful kind of patchwork song. I think that it's mostly about like her singing about her experience being a mother and understanding what it's like. You know, this album is the first that she crafted after she had her child. And so she sings, you know, who is it that never lets you down? Who is it that I can carry my joy on the right and the left? You know, who is it that gave you back your crown? It's being a mother. It's her daughter. It's that relationship that they have. The next song, Submarine, is also about her motherhood. And this is probably my favorite song on the album. When I first listened to the album, I remember this was the song that I put an asterisk next to. It has the most deep throat gurgling sounds on the entire record. It starts out so atmospheric and moody and creepy and eerie, and then it just builds and builds and builds until it kind of unfurls in this beautiful sort of vocal breakdown performed by Björk, where she has this sort of triumphant but melancholic melody that she sort of soars with before it all kind of simmers back down and goes back to the deep throat singing and the sort of strange off-kilter humming. I don't know how else to describe this song, but it is beautiful. The lyrics are singing, when will it be time to document? Do it now. Shake us out of the heavy, deep sleep. Do it now. And so basically this song is inspired by the fact that Björk apparently, after she had her baby, had trouble getting back into the habit of writing music, had trouble in the habit of getting back into work in general. And this was sort of her anthem to herself, saying, get up, you know, when will it be time to write again? When will it be time to not be so lazy? And I really relate to this message a lot, because I go through periods in my life where I constantly am reminding myself, when will it be time to document? When will it be time to stand up and do something again? Because I can get very lazy. I procrastinate a lot. It takes a long time for me to get to working on something sometimes. And when I listen to songs like this, it really helps motivate me, inspire me. I just feel inspired by this song ultimately because it's so powerful. It's so off kilter, but in a good way. And everything about it feels so meticulously and artfully planned that it couldn't have been better, in my opinion. And for that, it's my favorite song. It also embodies what we start to see on this album as more of a sort of aquatic, sort of underwater sound, because this song is called Submarine, and it literally sounds like it was filmed underwater, because it has that sort of murkier water sound to it. And that's going to be played through in other songs as we go into this album, particularly one coming up. The next song after this song is called Desired Constellation. This is my second favorite song, I think, on this album, because this is, again, where we sort of strip things back. The sampling that's used in the background is actually a vocal that is sampled from Vespertine from Hidden Place. It's a lyric from the song. I can't remember which. You can't understand that, but it's interesting when I was researching it to find that out. It's just this very sparse sample in the background, and her singing in this very sort of broken melody. How am I going to get it right? I throw these palmful of stars like dice in my hands, and I try and I try, I throw them repeatedly, and I love how she repeats repeatedly over and over in this very soft, hushed voice that's very calm and soothing and very reflective. And she sings until the desired constellation appears. I relate to that so much in terms of, in my understanding of this song, it's just like constantly in life, you're given cards, but you don't know how to deal them. You know, you don't know what hand you're going to be dealt next. And when you have the dice, you don't know what number is going to come up. Life is a gamble. Life is unpredictable. But we always try and control it, you know, in our heads with this idealized understanding of how the world is supposed to be and how our lives are supposed to be. We have this preternatural understanding of destiny for ourselves, for better or for worse. And we use that as sort of this framework to judge all the things that happen in our life. But sometimes destiny is not actually going to play out the way you always thought it would. And so the fact that, you know, you just have to throw the dice, but sometimes you want to keep throwing. You're not satisfied with what you get. And so you want that desired constellation. But ultimately, the song sort of says, well, how am I going to get it right? Is this searching for this desired constellation actually holding me back? Maybe I should learn to accept the initial roll of the dice, maybe the initial card I was dealt. Maybe I should stop looking for some idealized whatever that I don't have and start to appreciate what I already do have. And so it always will hit home to me whenever I listen to this song, also because of how melancholic and down tempo this song is and how surround it feels. I mean, she's literally, if you listen to it in headphones, which I highly recommend, she's right up against your ear. It's a beautiful, like, she's so close to you. It's close and intimate. And this album does need that, because then the rest of it can get so spaced out and all surrounding and you kind of feel lost in it. And this album kind of just grounds you in a moment and gives you this sort of space to reflect and think. And it's a beautifully conceived song, lyrically and sonically, about a concept that really, I'm glad she eloquently put in a song like this, because it's really hard to describe. And it's one of my favorite song titles of hers, actually. The next song is Oceania. Is a song that was actually commissioned by the Olympics. She performed this song in the 2004 Olympic opening ceremony in Greece. I think it was the opening ceremony. And of course, at the time, I was not a Björk fan, so I didn't really know who she was. I was only 11 years old. I don't know if I actually ever saw the performance then, but she unfurls while she's singing this song in her dress, a map of the world. It's a really interesting sort of song, and Oceania connects all of us. You know, there is one ocean that is connected to all the other oceans. You know, there is, you know, we separate out oceans, but they're not like continents. You know, the ocean is connected all throughout the globe. And the ocean is where we started. And, you know, she sings, your sweat is salty. You know, we were once living in the salt water as creatures, as, you know, organisms that evolved through evolution to walk on land. And she kind of archetypes Mother Earth as being in the water. And she sort of embodies that character as she's singing. You know, she sings, you see the continents, I see the islands. I don't see borders. I don't see all this political stuff that you humans do. I just see islands. I see the distinction between land and water. There's this sort of bare bones, sort of back to the roots, really this time going way back to, you know, when we were just little organisms swimming in the water. It's a beautiful song where she uses her voice in such a unique and abstract way that surrounds you, and it sounds beautiful but unnerving at the same time, and it employs a lot of different sounds of her voice, and I will always applaud this song. It's a really interesting, more pop song, but I don't want to necessarily classify it as pop because it's not. It was a single though. Then we come to a song that is a poem by E. Cummings called Sonnets Unrealities, Roman numeral 6. This is actually a poem written by E. Cummings called It May Not Always Be, and I Say. So like Volkuro, this is an interesting sort of break from the rest of the Björkness of this album, and it's her, again, paying tribute to a poem that she really loves. I mean, she does this on Vespertine as well. And so, but what she really does well is she crafts a very memorable melody on this song. I find myself listening almost entirely to the melody and not so much the lyrics, because when I first listened to this album, I actually knew that she didn't necessarily write this song. It was based on a poem. And I, to this day, kind of just view it as sort of a nice space where it's just a beautiful melody, obviously English lyrics that we can understand very clearly, because on this album it's not so common. And it's just a nice sort of a tribute to a poem she loves. It's a beautiful poem. Then we come to the weirdest song Björk has ever created, and definitely on this album, Ancestors. So I definitely do not recommend showing this song to people who are on the fence about Björk, because unfortunately this is not going to sway them in her favor. This is, I don't want to call it weird, because it's so much more than that. It's on such a higher level than weird. And Björk herself is. I mean, people use that to describe her, and anyone who's different and who makes art that's not always pretty or beautiful. And like I said, I wouldn't have it any other way. The first few times I listened to this song, it was a little challenging, but it was memorable and it stuck with me. This is the one song that includes a piano in the background that's just sort of used to sort of keep a minor sort of tempo going, but it doesn't really backbone the song that much because the piano is sort of disjointed from the melodies. The song is very disjointed and it gets very chaotic. There isn't a real clear melody or structure to this song. It's really just sounds being layered on top of other sounds in a beautiful and it's sometimes disturbing way. So at times you're like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And at times you're like, what the heck was that? There are a few moments in this song that will have your mouth literally wide open, because you'll just be like, did the human mouth just make that sound? And also you'll kind of want to laugh sometimes because some of the sounds are so bizarre. And I mean, you just have to know going forward. And that's why it's good that this song is further back in the album, that, this is Björk. And I don't actually laugh at it. I don't find it too funny because I don't find Björk funny. I mean, she's interesting. And if I find her funny, it's when she's trying to be funny. But in this song, she's not trying to be funny. If you're laughing at this song, you're not understanding it. It's called Ancestors, and that's the only sort of gateway that we have into any sort of meaning that we can derive from this song. And I think that it's just a tribute to The Voice, the TV show on NBC. No, I mean just the power and the sort of heritage of The Voice and how it's passed down from mother to child. And she's, just like culminating all of these. And it's like painting a picture of history and humanity and biology at the same time. It's combining all of these things. If you look at history and if you look at evolution, it's also random and chaotic and strange. And there is no divine structure to it, although we want to assume one. And this song kind of pays homage to that because it is strange and chaotic and unpredictable. And that fits the aesthetic that the song is trying to discover with its concept very well. So I do recommend this song, but make sure that you listen to the whole album along with this song. Don't just listen to this song on its own. And make sure that you've kind of discovered that you enjoy Björk's voice. Because if you don't like Björk's voice, obviously you're not going to like her music. But this song is going to really push you off a little bit, unfortunately. But for me, it is not by any means my least favorite song on this album. The next song, Mouth's Cradle, where she's getting back into trying to craft another pop song here. This song is very interesting. It has a very kind of almost catchy, but not really catchy melody. But the lyrics are what make this song so unique. This song feels like a prelude to the song that she creates for Volnicura, Mouth Mantra. They both have mouth in the title. And they're both sort of about her throat and her vessel that she uses to speak. This tooth is warmth-like, and these teeth are a ladder up to his mouth. These teeth are a ladder that I walk, that you can walk to if you want. If you walk up to the mouth's cradle, he always has a hope for me, always sees me when nothing else and everyone have left. That ghost is brighter than anyone and fulfills me with hope. So is she singing about the mouth of a lover? Could she be singing also about her own mouth? Or this mouth is just this metaphor for something else? There's a lot of meanings that I'm trying to piecemeal still to this day from this song. I do know that she uses this song, she gets a little bit political when towards the end she says, I need a shelter to build an altar away from the osamas and bushes. Now, remember, this song was composed probably right around the time of the Iraq War in 2003. And yeah, Björk has not been shied away from being political, especially recently. And, you know, it's really hard for us to see this now because Donald Trump is such an asshole. But George Bush was not so good either. Even though now we look back on him so fondly, I can only imagine what she would say about Trump if she put him in a song. But, you know, she compares Bush to Osama bin Laden by saying, I need a shelter away from both of them, which, you know, yeah. I mean, back in the time, well, I wasn't aware of the political situation back then because I was just a wee lad. But yeah, spill that tea, sis. Anyway, so and I love that, and it's always kind of steals the show because the rest of the lyrics, it's like at the end of the song, the rest of the lyrics, you're like, forget about that. What did she just say? You know, like, but it's an interesting song. It's got a lot to piecemeal and interpret. But the tooth is warm flake. It's like, yeah, our teeth are warm. Like they're protecting you. They're some sort of building that you can create to protect yourself. You know, she creates songs to protect herself, and her mouth is the vessel that she produces songs from. So I see that, but you know, mouth mantra sort of comes back to this, where she had the surgery and she couldn't sing, and she was saying about how she can't take her mouth for granted anymore. It's the same theme. The penultimate song on this album is, again, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, but Myth Vikudags? I don't know if that's how you say it. It means Wednesday in Icelandic. And again, it's some more kind of gibberish vocalizing. It has a very strange beat in the background that is a little bit off-putting and a little bit like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like Icelandic when she's singing, but it's pretty much gibberish. And then we come to the final song on this album, Triumph of a Heart. This is like the most pop constructed song on the album, and it has a little bit more of, again, a structure and chorus melody. It has the funniest music video that Björk has ever made, where she's dancing with this cat that is like supposed to be her husband, and then she gets really drunk and she sort of stumbles down the road and the cat like is cheating on her. It's so hilarious and strange. I highly recommend seeing this music video. But right off of the get-go, this song is very strange and kind of hilarious at the same time. It doesn't take itself so seriously like a lot of the other songs on the album do, which does allow a little bit more levity and allows you to kind of feel a little bit better about laughing at it, because you can tell that Björk was having a lot more fun with this song. Although the lyrics are still very powerful, they're singing, you know, about the triumph of a heart. She's basically using metaphors very artistically to describe the power of the heart and the power of love and how it triumphs over all. And she sings about like how blood runs up her legs and past her kidneys. And then she sings about this network in her lungs full of air that goes and gives life. You know, she's singing about all these important, powerful things, but at the same time, the song sound is just so wacky, and the beatboxing is so cool. It's got a real rhythm to it. It's got like a hip hop rhythm, and the beatboxing is so cute and fun. And then there's like this strange like meowing sound in the background, which of course then makes me think of the cat in the music video. And then the whole thing just starts to make me laugh a little bit, which is, I mean, you know, you're not supposed to laugh too much, but it is a fun song, and it does, like I said, it doesn't take itself as seriously. I recommend giving this song a listen, but like I said, it's not that accessible. None of this album is. So you always kind of have to go at it knowing that. I think knowing that in advance will make you appreciate it more. If you listen to this thinking you're getting something else, it's going to be really bad for you. And I feel so sorry for the random listener who happens to stumble upon this album and just like, what the, you know, because it could be a little bit scary. Let's be real. Because Björk is just being completely bizarre and beautiful on this record. And I love that she's unafraid to do that. You know, at this point in her career, she realized that she's come to a lot of success. She's like, oh, finally I can like make really bizarre music. And none of her albums get this bizarre. And I don't know if she's ever going to go back to being this strange. You know, all of her albums are so unique. I mean, this is her a cappella album. She's never going to record another album probably quite like this. She also didn't perform a lot of these songs live, and she's never really toured with this album, although I can understand why. I mean, these are a lot of hard songs to perform live, so it would be a little difficult for her to tour these songs. A lot of them she hasn't performed live very much at all. So it is kind of just exists in the MP3 CD format as just this very interesting sort of documentation of experimentation. There is one deluxe song called Komið, which translates to come from Icelandic. Yeah, come. Anyway, Come. But you know, it's again, it's more of a gibberish song, but it's just a nice sort of vocalization. It kind of closes out the album a little. Komið kind of brings that back to the scope of the album. You know, these gibberish Icelandic songs. I don't want to say gibberish like Icelandic is gibberish. I just mean she likes to vocalize and make strange songs that don't make any sense. I mean, like sounds. And these songs and like Obertan and all those, they come together as just sort of like interludes to tie the whole album together. And that's why also this album really feels like one long song to some extent. And it's a journey that is really interesting to take. So if you are definitely, you know, sleeping on this album, I recommend another listen if you're a Björk fan or if you're interested in more kind of avant-garde. I mean, some hip-hop fans may appreciate the beatboxing because it is really interesting. I think the beatboxing and throat singers that she uses, he's from New York, he's from Queens, he's a rapper and beatboxer. So she incorporates, you know, a hip-hop African-American rapper to craft some of the songs and sounds in the background of these songs. And I really appreciate that, actually. I forgot that she incorporated someone like that. And then Tanya Tagaq is a Canadian throat singer. She is a throat singer from the Inuk tribe of Canada, so she has Native American ancestry. So, you know, it's not just Björk's voice. It would be really cool if Björk was the one making all of these sounds and then she was just layering them back in post-production. But she does enough. I mean, her voice, it really shows. And she has amazing vocals. She reaches really high notes. She reaches really low notes. It's dedicated to just the aura and amazement of her voice. And so, I mean, it's a tribute to that, and well done for her. So yeah, I will be curious to know what your thoughts are on this record. It's an interesting one for sure, and it's one that I found was really interesting to review and to listen back to because I hadn't listened to it in several years. And it's not an album you keep coming back to because you don't listen to it that often, but when you do, it's definitely an interesting experience. I have already reviewed, at this point, Vespertine, Volnicura, and Homogenic. So I will link the reviews that I made of those 3 albums, which I love, in the description box. And I, of course, have plenty more Björk albums to review as I go through them, so look for that in the coming months. And thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'm really enjoying doing these. So subscribe for more and give a like if you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.